Hey guys, what's going on? Brian here for Animated Muscle and Performance, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to talk about flexibility within the diet, why it's so important, different ways that you can implement it into your own life, as well as some considerations that you might want to take depending on your goals. All right, so having flexibility in your diet is going to do a couple different things. First, it's going to allow you to navigate just your everyday life better in terms of celebrations, holidays, birthdays, and any other social setting you might find yourself in. It's gonna allow you to navigate those occasions a little bit better than a traditional meal plan, restrictive style approach is going to. The second thing it's gonna do for us is it's gonna allow us to take our personal preferences that may change over the duration of a weight loss or weight gain phase into account. And by this I mean, if at the beginning of a diet I am looking at eating some like chicken and rice, and down the road, say 4 to 6 weeks later, I'm just kind of chicken and rice out, I can swap those foods out for things like maybe steak and potatoes, and that will be fine so long as I adhere to my macros and I'm still making sure that I'm hitting my macros. So flexibility is important in that way because it allows us to take our personal preferences that may change over time into account. All right, so now that we've established that flexibility within the diet is really important and offers us a lot of potential benefits, it's time to talk about some considerations that you might want to make depending on what your goal is. And for this, I'm going to talk about two distinct scenarios that I think most people fall under. The first is going to be the caloric deficit, and this is going to be the individual who is looking to lose weight, who's looking to lose some body fat, and they are going to need to be eating less calories than are necessary for them to stay the same. So they're going to have to be eating underneath their maintenance level of calories in order to elicit a change from the body as far as burning fat and things of that nature. So the caloric deficit it comes with its own set of challenges. The main challenge for people in a caloric deficit or a dieting phase is going to be hunger. That's going to be the biggest thing that people run into for obvious reasons. You're eating less food than you're normally used to eating, and that's going to bring hunger to the forefront of problems that you will potentially face. So one way that we can use flexibility in food selection, because again, it's up to us. If you have elements of flexibility in your diet, it's up to you, the individual, to choose foods that kind of lend themselves to your goals. You can choose lower calorie foods. You can choose foods that just suit being in a caloric deficit a little bit more. And I'll give you an example. If you take a Pop-Tart, something that's very sugary, it's very calorically dense. Let's say that there's like 35 grams of carbs or something like that for one Pop-Tart. If you take 35 grams of a lower calorie food like white rice, you're gonna be eating a lot more rice than you would just the Pop-Tart. It's just going to be more food because it's a lower calorie food. So to get the same amount of carbohydrates that you would in a Pop-Tart, you're just going to have to eat more rice. And in this way, you're really volumizing the food that is available to you, which is a good tactic because depending on you, the individual, your calories and your macros might be quite low. So you're really taking full advantage of the food that you are able to get in by volumizing it. The next category of person that I want to talk about, the next kind of scenario that I find people in is going to be the caloric surplus, and this is going to represent the person who's looking to put on weight. Maybe you're a skinnier person looking to put on some muscle, looking to grow. And this individual is probably going to have to be in a caloric surplus, and that means that they're going to have to be eating above their maintenance calories and taking in more than is necessary for their body to stay the same. So the biggest issue that I find people in this scenario facing is going to be lack of appetite, really, but really just problems hitting their food and getting all of the necessary food in, because it's probably a higher amount of food than they're used to eating. And if you take your dieting approach and apply it to a weight gain approach, you might run into some issues, because if you're eating lower calorie foods, but your macros are super high, you might run into some appetite issues as far as like not really, being hungry and finding that it's hard to get that amount of food in, and you might find that it's uncomfortable in your, on your stomach, because it's just so much volume of food that you're taking in every day. And I would say that you could potentially run into some issues with training, because it's uncomfortable to go in and train when you're so stuffed full of food. So with these individuals, I really like the approach of looking at some more dense calories, things like the Pop-Tart, things that are more calorically dense, that are gonna give you the calories without taking up the room in your stomach. And I feel like in a lot of ways, you're really taking advantage of the appetite that you do have. The other thing is going to be introducing liquid calories. This could be shakes or other drinks. For example, when I'm in the off season, I like to do 40 grams of Gatorade powder during a workout as kind of like an intro workout. And that gives me a certain amount of carbs, and those are carbs that I don't have to eat. And it's a little bit easier on my stomach. Because when you're up at like 400 or 500 grams of carbs a day, it can get really, really tough to eat that all in whole foods. So finding more food options that are more calorically dense, as well as introducing some liquid calories, can go a long way in taking advantage of the appetite that you do have and really keeping it intact. And that's going to be the big overarching kind of theme with the caloric surplus, is that you want to keep your appetite intact. Don't crush it by eating, by binging, and don't crush it by eating, low calorie food, in the sense that you're just eating so much that it's hard to get through. Find some different ways, some liquid calories, or some more calorically dense options. It doesn't have to be a Pop-Tart, it doesn't have to be really sugary, but there are some more calorically dense options out there that will probably help you hit those numbers to make sure that you're in a caloric surplus. All right, so now that we've talked about some considerations that you might want to make depending on what your goal is moving forward, I thought I would go over how I like to practically implement it into my everyday life, whether it's I'm going through like pre-contest dieting phase, or I'm in the off season and it's more of a weight gain phase. I'm looking to put on weight and I'm in a caloric surplus. So first thing that I do when I am looking at a dieting phase is I'm gonna cut out all of the more dense food sources. So for example, currently, with my protein shake, I'm doing just something simple like a fruit snack. That's like an extra 18 to 20 grams of carbohydrates that help me in the off season, that really kind of take away from me in a dieting phase. And so I'm gonna take out the fruit snack or whatever kind of little calorically dense treat that I have throughout my day that kind of lends itself to me in the off season, but not so much when I'm dieting down. The next thing that I'll do is incorporate some carbohydrate sources that allow me to add water to them to really volumize them. This is gonna be things like grits and oatmeal. And I'll usually go to grits and oatmeal as my first 2 meals of the day. And just the simple act of adding water to those carbohydrate sources and them kind of like, volumizing when you microwave them or cook them is gonna help in making you feel like you're eating a lot more than you really are. And you're really volumizing the food that you're able to eat and taking full advantage of all the calories that you do have, even though you are in a caloric deficit. And now on the flip side of that, with the caloric surplus, or the weight gain phase, and that's the kind of the phase that I'm in currently, I'm going to look to kind of do the opposite. So I'm going to remove the grits and the oatmeal. Even though I do the oatmeal, I'll blend it up into a shake and add a little bit more water. So I'm not actually having to eat it, because again, I'm trying to prioritize my appetite and keep it intact as much as humanly possible during a weight gain phase. because if you're not hungry, it's going to be miserable to try and get this amount of food in. So the first thing that I'm doing is I'm getting rid of those things that lent themselves to me when I was dieting. And I'm gonna be looking to more calorically dense options. So maybe I'm, working in English muffins for breakfast, or, just toast or something like that. And like I mentioned before, I am, throwing in little treats here and there to help me get my carbohydrates up. I will also start, maybe I'll do 40 grams of Gatorade powder during a workout, and that'll help up my carbohydrates without actually having to eat them. And in this way, I'm trying to keep intact my appetite. I'm trying to get in the food without actually having to, physically eat all of it. And this is obviously gonna, keep my appetite intact, but it's also gonna be a lot less stress on my on my digestive system, which plays a role when you go in to train. Because if you've ever trained completely stuffed, it's uncomfortable, right? And it affects and it potentially impedes training sessions, and that's what we don't want. So going with more calorically dense options, if you can fit them, is definitely going to be the key here, as well as introducing liquid calories in the form of shakes, or like I said, like a Gatorade powder or something like that, something that you can drink and doesn't actually take up a ton of room in your stomach, is going to be the way that I go in the caloric surplus. All right, so as you guys can see, flexibility within the diet is so incredibly important and potentially valuable to you, as it really allows you to navigate life a little bit better. Nothing has to be off limits. Everything just needs to be budgeted and accounted for, and you can swap things in and out. The examples that I used were how you can apply flexibility to your diet by simply choosing different foods that lend themselves more to your goal, whether it's weight loss or weight gain. But this could also mean something like restricting your food a little bit more earlier in the day if you know that you're gonna go and celebrate for a birthday or a holiday or something like that later in the day. Having the flexibility to do so really allows you to just navigate life a lot better. And that's really what we're after when talking about adherence and long-term sustainability. So that is gonna be all I have on flexibility in the diet. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I hope you learned something. I hope it was informative. If you're interested in any online coaching, I will leave my email in the description. Reach out to me, shoot me an email. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.